For today's video, we are going to discuss to you all about biodiversity and the healthy society. But before that, let's test your brain muscle by answering these few trivia questions that we have prepared. You can write your answers on a sheet of paper. Good job! Thank you for answering! The Earth is home to different species and communities of species. Biodiversity is unique in all parts of the Earth. The term biodiversity was first coined by Walter Jurgensen in 1986. It is defined by IUCN in 1998 as the variety and variability of species of their population. Biodiversity is the abbreviated word for biological diversity, with bio means life and diversity as variety. Decrease in biodiversity is well known worldwide. Vertebrates fell to 60% from the 1970s due to human causes. It is anticipated that by 2020, wildlife decline will be 67% of the present number. The Worldwide Fund for Nature and Zoological Society of London reported an annual decrease in wildlife by 2%. A major cause is human population, which has doubled in numbers since 1960 to 7.4 billion. Humans have industrialized the natural habitat of wildlife as well as marine life. Leaving these creatures with no place to live would eventually cause their death. Earth might enter the sixth mass extinction event according to experts. Mass extinction is described as the disappearance of species at a rate 1,000 faster than usual. As the environmental conditions change from what millions of species adapted to, many are under the threat of extinction. Every species is valuable and in need of protection. Alongside the species threatened by extinction, here are some of the interesting aspects of our Earth's biosystem. About 1 million plant and animal species face the threat of extinction. Extinction is a major part of the history of our Earth. Unfortunately, human activities speed up the extinction rate we observe, which threaten the ongoing existence of the creatures with whom we share our planet. At least 680 vertebrate species have gone extinct since the 16th century. Local variety species, wild populations, and domesticated plants and animals' breeds deteriorate, shrink, or vanish. Species diversity and living organisms are becoming extinct.
Biodiversity. It is defined as the vast variety of life forms in the earth. It encompasses all kinds of life forms, from single-celled organisms to the largest multi-celled organisms. Its definition is in the structural and functional perspective and not as individual species. It is the variability among living organisms from all sources, including terrestrial, marine, and other aquatic ecosystems, and the ecological complexes of which they are part of, including the diversity within species, between species, and of ecosystems. Biodiversity is the source of all essential goods and ecological services that constitute source of life for all, and it has the direct consumptive value in food, agriculture, medicine, and in industry. Understanding biodiversity within the concept of ecosystem need a thorough study on the relationship of biotic living organisms and abiotic non-living organisms. Interdisciplinary action is needed to study the ecosystem biodiversity. For example, Snails in the area of a rice field can predict a low production of rice since eggs of snails are considered pests for the rice plant. Large number of species in the area is a predictor of sustainable life in that area. Sustainability of the ecosystem ensures a better survival rate against any natural disaster. We humans must preserve and conserve the biodiversity of all creatures. This is the illustration of ecosystem services that we can observe from the biodiversity. Natural resources. These are water, land, and soil. Benefits. These are well-being, food and water, strong economy, and our public health. Drivers of change. These are policy, climate, pollution, and our land use. Here are the illustrations of how we can achieve a sustainable development in our life. The Venn diagram of sustainable development and the 5 P's of sustainable development. In simpler terms, people will always depend on biodiversity in the wholeness of our being and in our daily life. Our health will ultimately depend upon the products we acquire from the ecosystem.
Good day everyone, my name is Ira Ailinga and I will be continuing our discussion on biodiversity. Let us now proceed to our next topic, which is changes in biodiversity. So what are these changes in biodiversity and how does it affect the wildlife, the marine life, and us human beings? So any alteration in any system could bring varied effects. A change in biodiversity could have unpredictable effects not only in the wildlife or marine life, but also to us human beings. Say for example, humans leaving the forest would disturb the natural order of life. So how would they disturb the natural order of life? First, the trees and plants would be affected in the land clearing operations where the houses would be built, because in order for the houses to be built, there should be a flat, cleared area. And in order to do this, they need to cut the trees and the plants on the area they chose to build the houses. Next, the animals, insects, and all types of life forms in the cleared area would either be displaced or most likely be killed because their natural habitat is already damaged and the places where they used to live is already gone. So if this happens, the loss of these life forms could affect the entire ecosystem governing that environment. And the food chain might be damaged because these animals, insects, and all types of life forms living in that area plays a very important role in the ecosystem and in the food chain. And without this, if they are displaced or killed, then the food chain would greatly be affected. Based from these situations, we can clearly infer that when our ecosystem is not well taken care of, biodiversity encounters changes that may impact human health on different levels. Now, let us proceed to threats to biodiversity. So, there are major threats to biodiversity that were identified by the United Nations Environment Program. So, these are the following. First is the habitat loss and destruction. So, the major contributing factor here is the inhabitation of human beings and the use of land for economic gains. Second, we have alterations in ecosystem composition. So alterations and sudden changes either within species group or within the environment could begin to damage the entire ecosystem. Alterations in ecosystem are a critical factor contributing to species and habitat loss. Third is overexploitation. Overhunting, overfishing, or overcollecting of species can quickly lead to its decline. Changing consumption patterns of humans is often cited as the key reason for this unsustainable exploitation of natural resources. Fourth is pollution and contamination. So, biological systems respond slowly to changes in their surrounding environment. Pollution and contamination cause irreversible damage to species and varieties. Fifth and last is global climate change. So both climate variability and climate change cause biodiversity loss. Species and populations may be lost permanently if they are not provided with enough time to adapt to changing climatic conditions. So that ends my part, and the next part would be consequences of biodiversity loss. Thank you.
Biodiversity refers to the presence of different species of animals, plants, reptiles, birds over a particular piece of land. It includes every organism that's living. At the center of biodiversity and conservation, we included human and human cultural diversity as part of biodiversity. We use the term biocultural to describe the dynamic, continually evolving, and interconnected nature of people and place, and the notion that social and biological dimensions are interrelated. In simple words, biodiversity actually refers to the plenitude of fauna and flora around us in the world, on our planet Earth. In the world around us, plays an incredibly necessary role as each organism, whether animal or plant, has a relevant role to play in our ecological system. Biodiversity of a place provides bread and butter to a number of people. People like farmers, fishermen, and small traders are closely related to biodiversity. Biodiversity at a place produces many products with a good amount to humans. Different fruits, herbs, and other products are used to sold by humans to sustain a living. But what are the consequences of biodiversity loss? The basic concept about biodiversity loss was from Charles Darwin and Alfred Russel Wallace. Every species in the ecosystems has significant roles, function, or niches that are specialized to capture, transfer, utilize, and ultimately lose both energy and nutrients. Disturbing their distributions will surely affect its nutrient cycles and soil contents and influence environmental conditions such as water cycles, weather patterns, climate, and other abiotic aspects. The loss of biodiversity has many consequences that we understand and many that we do not. It is apparent that humankind is willing to sustain a great deal at biodiversity loss if there are concomitant benefits to society. We hope they are net benefits. The continued loss of this biological wealth poses a great threat to the survival of man. Biodiversity degradation is a matter of concern in the countries of the world. The countries Asia, Central America, South America, and Africa are the rich biodiversity which species of plants and animals found. The irony is that illiteracy, poverty, lack of scientific development are the reasons which are responsible for the diversity degradation in these countries. The consequences of biodiversity loss are destruction, degradation, and fragmentation of habitats, exploitation, pollution,
And
In
climate
today's
change.
world of new advancement, world leaders find it necessary to cut down a lot of trees in forests every day for infrastructure technology. This process is extremely harmful to the environment. It is also called deforestation. The harm of nature is due to the loss of trees on which a multitude of organisms depends on and provide with us oxygen to the ecosystem that these jungles provide for them. In the name of development, kilometers worth of forest is cut down, reducing by tens of thousands and the biodiversity on our planet with every ecosystem being destroyed. Mahatma Gandhi once said, "The earth has everything for the need of the people, but not for their greed." Human activities have done a lot of damage to the nature, so there is a need to conserve it from further loss.
Nutritional impact of biodiversity. According to World Health Organization, biodiversity is a vital element of a human being's nutrition because of its influence to food production, as it ensures the sustainable productivity of soils and provides the genetic resources for all crops, livestock, and marine species harvested for food. Biodiversity is a major factor that contributes to sustainable food production for human beings. A society or population must have access to a sufficient variety of nutritious food as it is a determinant of their health as human beings. Nutrition and biodiversity are linked at many levels. First is the ecosystem with food production as an ecosystem service. Next is the species in the ecosystem, and last is the genetic diversity within species. Nutritional composition between foods and among varieties. Cultivars, breeds of same food can differ dramatically, affecting micronutrient availability in the diet. Healthy local diets with adequate levels of nutrients intake necessitates maintenance of high biodiversity levels. Intensified enhanced food production through irrigation, use of fertilizer, plant protection, or the introduction of crop varieties and cropping patterns affect biodiversity and thus impact global nutritional status and human health. Habitat simplification, species loss, and species succession often enhance communities' vulnerabilities as a function of environmental receptivity to ill health.
Almost all living organisms are dependent to their environment to live and reproduce. Basic needs of living organisms, such as air, water, food, and habitat, are provided by its environment. The evolution of human beings was due to the improved access to these basic needs. Advances in agriculture, sanitation, water treatment, and hygiene have had a far greater impact on human health than medical technology. Although the environment sustains human life, it can also cause diseases. Lack of basic necessities is a significant cause of human mortality. Environmental hazards increase the risk of cancer, heart disease, asthma, and many other illnesses. These hazards can be physical, such as pollution, chemicals, and contaminants, or they can be social, such as dangerous work, poor housing conditions, urban sprawl, and poverty. Unsafe drinking water and poor sanitation and hygiene are responsible for a variety of infectious diseases such as diarrhea, cholera, meningitis, and gastritis. In 2015, approximately 350,000 children under the age of live, mostly in the developing world, died from diarrheal diseases related to unsafe drinking water, and approximately 1.8 billion people use drinking water contaminated with feces. More than 2 billion people lack access to basic sanitation. The COVID 19 pandemic has led to a dramatic loss of human life worldwide and presents an unprecedented challenge to public health, food systems, and the world of work. The economic and social disruption caused by the pandemic is devastating. Tens of millions of people are at risk of falling into extreme poverty, while the number of undernourished people, currently estimated at nearly 690 million, could increase by up to 132 million by the end of the year. The interrelation between human health and biological diversity is considerable and complex. With the current biodiversity loss at unprecedented rates, the delicate balance between human health and biological diversity is at risk. Interestingly, according to experts, climate change could also have a serious impact on human health and could deteriorate farming systems and reduce nutrients in some foods. In this case, biodiversity increases resilience, thus helping adjust to new environmental conditions. Safeguarding of coral reefs, for instance, is essential to reduce the risk of floods, as this extraordinary ecosystem can reduce wave energy by 97%, thus protecting over 100 million people all over the world. Relationships between human health and the environment raise many ethical, social, and legal dilemmas by forcing people to choose among competing values. Many of the issues at the intersection of health and the environment have to do with managing benefits and risk. For example, pesticides play an important role in increasing crop yields, but they can also pose hazards to human health and the environment. Alternatives to pesticide use create trade-offs in health. Public health authorities have opted to regulate the use of pesticides to enhance food production while minimizing damage to the environment and human health. Energy production and use health can sustain human life, but it can also pose hazards to human health and the environment, such as air and water pollution, oil spills, and destructions of habitats. Human rights issues also come up with research on environmental health that involves human subjects. For such research to be ethical, human subjects must give consent, and great care must be taken to ensure that they understand that they can opt out of the research project. Since the late 1990s, some pesticide companies have tested their products on human subjects to gather data to submit to the government for regulatory purposes. Some commentators charge that these experiments are unethical because they place people at unacceptable high risk without a clear benefit to society. Others have argued that the experiments, if properly designed and implemented, could produce important benefits to society by providing useful knowledge about the effects of pesticides that lead to stronger regulations.